And ultimately, and honestly, I credit this and this process to helping me shift my mindsets that ultimately then led me to think I need to write a book. And then even more, I need to start a business. And I just never thought I would be an entrepreneur with my prevention mindset, because with my prevention mindset, being an entrepreneur just scared the crap out of me.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. Today, I am very excited because we get to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is mindset. We have on the line with us Ryan Gottfredson, Ph.D. He's a cutting-edge leadership development author, researcher, and consultant. He helps organizations and individuals vertically develop their leaders, primarily through a focus on mindsets. He's the Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author of the book called Success Mindsets, The Key to Unlocking Greater Success in Your Life, Work, and Leadership. And he recently released a new book called Becoming Better, which is really a manual for anyone here listening right now. And I'm sure we're going to get into it. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on. I think that being a podcast is a lot of work. And I don't know if you get enough credit for all the work that you put into this, but I want you to know that I recognize it and just appreciate the opportunity of being on your show.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to jump into this. So why don't we start with like a little bit of a background about yourself and how you got into doing the work you're doing today.
Yeah, so I'm going to take you back to high school. So I grew up in northern Utah, and I took a class in high school that I don't think is offered in very many high schools. And the class was sports psychology. And I grew up playing sports, primarily basketball. And I took this class, and one of the books we had to read was Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. And then I got to choose 3 other books that I could read within the sports psychology space. So I read 3 books by basketball coaches, and they all ended up being largely about leadership. And I remember reading these books and thinking, if I could write books like this for a career, that would be my dream job. And I just had no clue how to do that. But then fast forward a few years later, I was living in Boston, and I met a Harvard Business School professor, and I asked him, what do you teach? And he said, organizational behavior. I said, what's that? And I don't remember his answer, but I remember thinking, this is sports psychology, but for business. And I just kind of felt like I found my home and my direction. And so I ended up getting a PhD in organizational behavior from Indiana University, took a job where I'm currently at Cal State Fullerton, and I get to teach and do research on leadership and how we become the best versions of ourselves. And then I take my research and I work with organizations to help them develop their leaders and employees.
Amazing. Amazing. So yeah, tell us about the new book now. And this is more meant not just for high level executives. This is kind of like everyday people who want to be the best version of themselves, right?
It is. Yeah, it's for everybody. In fact, let me give you an example. So I talk in my book a little bit about a woman named Cheryl. So I met Cheryl because her boss came to me and said, hey, can you coach Cheryl? And I was like, sure. Why does she need coaching? And he said, well, she's been in our organization for the last 10 years and been in this role for that entire time. And he just said, the reality is we need to either move her up or move her out. And I don't want to move her out, but she's not ready to move up. I said, okay, well, let me connect me and let's see if I can help her out. So he connects us via email, and then I get an email from Cheryl, and she's saying, hey, I'm excited about this coaching opportunity. This is great. And I look at the bottom of her email, and there's a bunch of letters after her last name, and there's a bunch of stamps representing certificates that she had gotten it. And I'm thinking, looking at this, here's a very qualified person. Like, why is she struggling in this role? And so I got on the phone with Cheryl, and I kind of pointed that out. I was like, Cheryl, you've gone through a lot of effort to develop yourself. Why do you think this coaching call is needed? And she said, well, quite frankly, I'm stuck. And I said, okay, tell me more. And she said, well, every year I've gotten passed up for promotion. And whenever I get passed up for promotion, I go get a new degree or a new certificate. And it just doesn't seem to be working. And I don't know if you've ever been in that place where you just know you have the knowledge and skills to be successful, but you aren't at the level that you want. And that's where I found Cheryl, and I've been there before. And so I had to kind of teach Cheryl that, look, we actually have two different sides of ourselves. We've got what I call our doing side. Think about maybe a horizontal axis. This is our level of talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities. And that's what she had been emphasizing. But it didn't really lead to her being somebody that they could promote. Well, that's because becoming somebody that others want to promote is generally not connected as firmly to our doing it side. It's connected more firmly to what I call our being side. And our being side is more of this vertical axis. And our being side is the quality and sophistication of our body's internal operating system. It's our character, it's our psyche, it's our mindsets, it's our consciousness, it's our emotional regulation abilities. And so what I discovered with Cheryl as we got into the coaching is while she had the talent and skills to be successful, she had fears around taking initiative. And so she was really good with taking direction, but she really struggled to take initiative. And as we dug into this, we learned that she has a fear that if she takes initiative, then she'll fail. And if she fails, then she'll lose her job. And she really needs her job. And so ultimately, it wasn't a lack of knowledge and skills. It was fears and insecurities connected to her being side. And so what I've learned in this space is almost all development effort focuses on our doing side. You think about our education systems, our athletic programs, and our organizational development efforts. It's about gaining new knowledge and skills. And that can be incrementally helpful. But what I've learned is that if we could focus on our being side, that could be transformational. And so that's what my new book is all about, Becoming Better. It's all about the being side, what it is, how we evaluate our altitude, and then how do we elevate along our being side so that we become better.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I actually mentor some younger guys, and that's one of the things I kind of say is I'm like, hey, there's two things. You called it being and doing. I guess the way I phrased it was you got the mindset and you got the skill set, right? And so yeah, you have to learn some skills and get those skill sets, right? So you can add value through those skills. That's great. But in my opinion, what you call the being side, the mindset side, is far more important, because if you have a powerful mindset, you'll learn whatever skills you need to learn anyway. Plus, you'll have the mental capacity and the confidence to take initiative and to do the things you were talking about, like with Cheryl.
You're spot on, right? The mindsets will dictate the speed by which we gather the doing side skills. They also will magnify whatever skills that we currently have. And so to your point is, when I work with people, there's a variety of different angles that we could take on our being side. And the angle that I generally take is mindsets. I help people to awaken to the quality of their mindsets. Now, what's interesting here is almost everybody thinks that they have good and high quality mindsets, right? Like one of the mindset sets, so I focus on 4 different sets of mindsets. It's backed by 40 years of academic research, but one of those sets is fixed and growth mindsets. So many people may be familiar with these, but if I was to go into a room with 100 people, 100 leaders, and ask them, do any of you have a fixed mindset? I don't think anybody would raise their hand. Right? Nobody thinks that they have a fixed mindset. But what I found, because I have a mindset assessment, in fact, it's free. It's on my website. You could go there and take it. And what I found, I've had over 50,000 people take my mindset assessment. And I found that only 2.5% are in the top quartile for all 4 sets of mindsets. And I've also found that in the case of fixed and growth mindsets, that 60% of leaders have a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset. And so mindsets is something that's a little bit tricky because we all think we have good mindsets, but that's generally not the case. And I know that that was the case for me. When I first started learning about mindsets, I thought, oh yeah, I've got really good mindsets. But as I started to learn about them, it was a little bit of a tough pill to swallow to say, my mindsets may not be the best. So mindsets is a great angle for us to look at that being side.
Yeah, I love that. And the funny thing is, even if you're good at seeing the fixed mindsets in other people, doesn't mean it's so easy to catch it in yourself, right?
Sure.
I'm really good at pointing it out in other people, like, and by the way, for people listening, if you're not familiar with the fixed and growth mindset, a fixed mindset is kind of like, well, I'm not good at math. I've never been good at math. I'm never going to be good at math. It's fixed, right? Whereas a growth mindset might be like, even though I'm not good at math right now, I know that if I put in the work and effort and learn, I can be good at math in the future, right? And substitute math for any other topic you want to fill in there.
Yep.
So I think it's one of the most powerful mindsets to have, as you mentioned, the growth mindset over a fixed mindset. And we think we're growth mindset, but like you mentioned, so many of us, if you really dig down into it, it's like, oh, why didn't you try this initiative? That's not going to work. We tried that 10 years ago and it never worked or whatever, right? So yeah, we would love to hear more about these mindsets. That was, you said, one of four kind of mindsets?
Yeah, so that's one of four is fixed and growth mindsets. And I loved how you defined it. It was spot on. And to your point, if we learn and grow, that is not an indicator that we have a growth mindset. Everybody learns and grows, whether they have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. What oftentimes sets us apart in the terms of these mindsets is, as you had mentioned, if we have a fixed mindset, our body is wired to avoid failure, and our body is wired to always look good. And so in the short term, we choose to hold on to what's worked in the past, and we're reluctant to embrace new ways of functioning, new ways of working, and new ways of pushing our understanding. And so, yeah, everybody says I have a growth mindset because we learn and grow, but how reluctant, or I'm going to say it this way, how willing are you to step into a learning zone challenge? That's the real revealer on kind of where we're at. And it's a continuum. It's not an either or, it's a continuum. So we could be really fixed or we could be slightly fixed. And so that's what my assessment is designed to help people get into. So that's just a little added on the fixed and growth. Do you want to add anything else before I move into?
Oh, just shout out your website where people can take that assessment. I'm sure people will want to see how they rank against the other, see if they fall in that top 2.5% there.
I know, right? So it's RyanGottfredson.com. Good luck spelling it. But if you were to just Google Ryan and the book Success Mindsets or Becoming Better, my website will pop right up.
Okay, cool. I'll spell it for him real quick. Gottfredson.
There you go.
But yeah, let's move on to another mindset that you mentioned.
Yeah. So that's fixed and growth. Another set that I look at is called closed and open. So this is how open or closed our mind is to the ideas and suggestions of others. So for example, if I were to say, how do most people respond to constructive criticism? You would say they get
constructive criticism. Most people probably get defensive.
They get defensive, right?
Yeah.
That's a body. Let's point this out, right? That's a body's knee-jerk reaction. Mm-hmm. Because what our mindset is doing, this is representing a closed mindset. Our closed mindset sees constructive criticism as an attack. When we see it as an attack, then our body will respond by being defensive. And this occurs at a non-conscious level. It's an automatic processing. Our open mindset is when our body has the ability to create the space to sit with that constructive criticism. Doesn't mean we have to agree with it, but we create the space to sit with it and wonder, is there something here that I could benefit from? So it's ultimately how open versus closed our mind is to the ideas, perspectives, and suggestions of others. Again, it doesn't mean we have to run with them. It's just how willing we are to take those types of things in.
Man, so that is so good. That is so good. And, years ago, I was in a mastermind where people were trying to give me feedback. This is probably 8-9 years ago. And I was just being defensive. And finally, one of the guys was like, why are you being so defensive? Dude, just take it in, And I actually felt myself take a deep breath, release, my shoulders dropped, I relaxed. And then I started to actually take it in. It was a really interesting, I'll never forget this moment. It was a very pivotal moment for me, actually, to actually realize that moment. Literally, my shoulders dropped. I took a deep breath, and all of a sudden, but I think for years, probably my whole life before then, and probably most of the time since then, it's this initial reaction. And I think it takes, it sounds like a simple concept. Oh, are you open or closed, right? Sounds like a simple concept. You need a very high level of emotional kind of intelligence, to really be aware and to listen. And that initial reaction of getting defensive will pop up in you. And can you calm, pause, relax, take it in, and stay calm? I mean, just an incredible, incredible concept.
Well, yeah, let me point out a couple of things that you brought up. So one, it was like I felt it as you're saying it, like I had to take a deep breath, right? And
Mhm.
what we need to recognize is our mindsets are very much connected in to our body's nervous system. And
Mhm.
our nervous system is what dictates our responsiveness in these moments. And so whenever we do this being side development work, it really is all about refining and upgrading our body's nervous system so that we are less reactive and more intentionally responsive. So when I talk about these continuums, right, we talked about fixed and growth, now closed and open. These represented a continuum of our body being wired more for self-protection in the moment versus value creation in the long term. So what you just gave us a great example of what your body was doing was protecting you from those negative emotions in the moment or those difficult emotions in the moment. But it was holding you back from long-term value creation, the growth and development that would allow you to become the person that you needed to become. And so that's what's tricky about these mindsets is that when our body shifts us into self-protection mode, it feels right to us because it's protecting us in that moment. And we just have a hard time recognizing how it's holding us back. And that's why so many people have a hard time, or I'm going to say that it's so easy for them to say, oh, yeah, I have great mindsets. But they're going to say that even if they have these self-protective mindsets. So that
Yeah.
paints, hopefully, the spectrum, self-protection to value creation.
Do you have any advice? I mean, first of all, I think just becoming aware that even though you may think, oh yeah, I'm super open to feedback, you might be defensive, or and then someone gives you a feedback and then you'll make an excuse or give a reason why or try to justify it or something else, right? It's still a little closed there. For people who realize that they may be a little closed, which I think is the first step, is to actually being aware of it. Because I think most people are just
Yep.
what they call unconsciously incompetent about it.
Yep.
They're closed and they don't even know that they're closed, right? So step one, maybe develop the awareness that maybe you are a little closed. But how can we, is there anything that you found that maybe helps people to be more open, be less reactive, and stay calm during situations like that? Any advice there?
Yeah. So and the I advice generally will work for any of these sets of mindsets. And I'm going to agree with you. The first step is always awareness. So I've just found that there's a lot of power in putting labels to these mindsets because if we never have labels, we can never introspect about them. So hopefully that's part of what we're, the value we're giving with our conversation. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the first step is always awareness. But I'm going to kind of give us two broad angles to think about shifting our mindsets. So one is we actually have to experiment with pushing against our wiring, right?
Mm.
So if my body is wired to get defensive when I receive constructive criticism, I probably need to practice or experiment with receiving constructive criticism and trying to create space for it. Now, what I don't want to do if I do this is I probably don't want to go to my boss and ask my boss to do this because that's a pretty high pressure conversation. But what I can do is maybe I could start with my brother, my sister, my spouse, even my child to just say, hey, could you give me some feedback on how I could improve? And you want to do this, that is going to feel uncomfortable, but only a little uncomfortable, right? So we got to start small and then build up. So that's one strategy, and it really is a necessary part of it. We actually have to step into a little bit of discomfort. Too much is going to be overwhelming for our body. So we need to do a little bit. So that's one strategy. But we need to do that in tandem with another strategy. And that is we need to understand that our mindsets are actually neural connections in our brain. And so in our brain, we all have an open mindset neural connection. We all have a closed mindset neural connection. One of those is just stronger than the other. And so when one is stronger than the other, that becomes the default mode by which we process information. But we can intentionally turn on the other mindset, the open mindset in this case. And when we intentionally turn it on, we activate it. Now, the cool thing about understanding this is that our neural connections are a lot like our muscles. The more we use them, the stronger they become. And so what I've learned about mindset shifts, almost everybody says, I'll ask them, is shifting your mindsets easy or difficult? Everybody very quickly says it's difficult. And I'm not going to fully disagree with that. But is mindset shifts more about big, grand activities or small, frequent efforts? And it's small, frequent efforts. And so shifting our mindsets just isn't as difficult as we think it is. We just need to engage in exercises that will activate and stimulate our value-creating mindset neural connections. And what research has found is this could be as little as 3 minutes. So research has found is you watch a 3-minute video activating your value-creating mindset neural connections. And if you do that every day for 2 weeks, you will have a significant shift in how your brain naturally processes your world. And so if you were to go to my website, take my assessment, you'll get a whole host of resources. So like books, articles, videos, journaling questions, discussion questions. These are all small activities we could do essentially on a daily basis to activate our mindsets. In fact, maybe once we get through the other sets, I'll give a specific example from my journey. But let me pause there and see if you have any comments.
Yeah. So the video you mentioned, you said, watch this video 3 minutes a day and it can change. Is that a video that you provide when people do the assessment, or what kind of video did you mean there?
Well, I provide some options for videos. So if you wanted to look up the research behind this, there's a really great TED Talk by Aaliyah Crum, C-U-R-M, and the TED Talk's about the placebo effect. And she talks through 3 different studies. And the third study in her TED Talk is the research that she did on mindsets and mindset shifting. And so it's a experimental condition where they had these participants watch a 3-minute video related to their mindset associated with stress. And it drastically impacted how their body responded to stress and how they performed in the workplace.
Got it. Nice. Excellent. Yeah. And I love what you said about going to your friends. And this is actually something they teach in like high level seminars and personal development stuff. It's like, ask your family and your close friends, certain questions about you, that maybe asking them for feedback. Like you said, don't go to your boss, go to maybe your brother, sister, friends, ask for feedback. And then I think another key there is shut your mouth. Just listen and don't respond. Don't try to reason. Don't try to give you all the reasons why you are a certain way that they're saying that you maybe could improve on or something like that. Yep. Just shut your mouth the whole time and just take it in. The mind, try to slow down the chatter in your head and just kind of really try to take it in and get into that practice. But I love that. But yeah, let's move on to the other mindset strategies.
Yeah. So the next set, so we got fixed and growth, closed and open. Next set is prevention and promotion. So prevention is more self-protective, promotion is more value-creating. When we have a prevention mindset, our body is wired to want to avoid problems. When we have a promotion mindset, our body is wired to seek purpose and goal fulfillment. And what I've learned here is that if we don't have a clear purpose or clear goal, naturally our body will take on more of a prevention mindset, which is essentially, how do I survive today? Right? So when I first learned about mindsets, this is one that hit me pretty hard because I knew that I had a prevention mindset, because how I woke up every morning was, how do I get through today as easy as possible? And that's just different than thinking about, how do I make the most of today? How do I make the most of this week? How do I make the most of this year? And what I find is that in organizations, about 60% to 70% of employees, non-leaders, have a prevention mindset. When I look at leaders, they generally have a really strong promotion mindset, at least focused on results, not always on purpose. And there's a difference, and I think it's a valuable difference. But most leaders have a promotion mindset. And so that's the continuum. Are we more wired for safety, comfort, no problems? Or are we more wired to create value by fulfillment of a purpose or a goal?
And if someone kind of is realizing, yeah, you know what, I have kind of been in this prevention mindset, I really want to, change and be more to the promotion mindset. is that just like, what are some of the steps there? Is it mainly setting goals, or like what advice would you have there?
Well, that's a start. So I'm going to give you a kind of a theory, and then I'm going to give you I'm going to come to my example that I mentioned earlier. Okay.
Perfect.
So one is, I think you need a destination, and two, you need a why for getting there. Right. I mean, almost think about climbing a mountain. You're never going to climb a mountain until you say, I'm going to climb that mountain, and you give yourself a reason for why you're going to climb the mountain. So we do need a destination that we are shooting towards, and we need a connection to why. Now, and I'm going to grab a book here, but when I first started learning about this mindset concepts, I met a CEO of a business here in Orange County, California, and he's this really charismatic guy. And almost immediately I sat down, he's like, hey, wait, I've got a book for you. And he's like, this is going to change your life. And so I'm like, awesome. I love books. And he goes and grabs it. He comes back and he hands me this book that I'm showing you here. It's called The 5-Minute Journal. And I'm very gracious, like, oh, thank you so much. I love books. This is great. But inwardly, I'm thinking, who the hell do you think I am? There is no way that I'm going to journal. Like, I'm just not a journaler. I'm not going to do it. And so I literally came home and I went to got in my office and I went to throw it in the trash. And like mid-throw, I had almost this spiritual epiphany where this guy's face is in my mind's eye and I hear him say the words, this book will change your life. And so I kind of reel it back in and I open it up, and what it does is, if you can see this, we've got an inspirational quote, and then we've just got 3 prompts to answer in the morning. The first prompt is identify 3 things you're grateful for, and then 3 things that would make today great, and then fill in some self-affirmations. Amazing. And so I was like, maybe I should try this out. So I was like, I'm going to try this out for 2 weeks. And if it helps me, I will keep doing it. If it doesn't, it's going in the trash. Well, I have this right next to me because I've been doing this every day for the last 7 years. Like, that's Amazing. The impact that it's had. So why it was beneficial for me is that the second question, what are 3 things that would make today great? As I started writing that down every day, and it was always, something different, it started to get my mind. What I was doing is I was activating my promotion mindset neural connections that I just didn't before. And so as I started activating that more and more, I sensed this shift. I was no longer waking up thinking, how do I survive today? I was waking up, how do I make the most of today? And ultimately, honestly, I credit this and this process to helping me shift my mindsets that ultimately then led me to think, I need to write a book. And then even more, I need to start a business. And I just never thought I would be an entrepreneur with my prevention mindset, because with my prevention mindset, being an entrepreneur just scared the crap out of me. Mm-hmm. But once I developed more of a promotion mindset, I was like, I have to start a business. Yeah, it's risky. Yeah, it's difficult, but that's the only way I'm going to be able to climb up to the mountain that I want to climb. And that was a huge shift. And what we've learned from adult development psychology, what I was doing as I made this shift was I was shifting from largely a dependent thinker to more of an independent thinker. And that was just part of my kind of maturity along my being side. So I'm happy for you to comment or add anything in addition to that.
Oh yeah, no, I think that was great. Nothing to add there. I think that was really spot on. And I mean, I will say, doing the gratefulness part too, just going out every morning, like me in the morning, I try to go out, get some sunlight, say everything I'm grateful for, really get into this feeling of gratefulness. I like adding in, about what's going to make today a great day, and kind of really thinking about that. But this, I think just in general, the process of being intentional about this stuff is something that most people miss, right? How many people just wake up, grab their phone, start checking email or social media or whatever, right? And then what's happening is what you just said, they're getting dependent thoughts, right? Their social media is telling them what to think about versus them controlling their day, going out, saying what they're grateful for, looking at how today's going to be a great day and setting themselves up for success for that day. It's such a simple thing. People have probably heard it before, but how many of you listening right now are actually doing it? Because I can tell you it's a complete game changer. I have been doing it for a very, very long time. And I actually, for me, it's like now it's like I don't want to miss it. I'm like, no, I got to get outside and get my sunlight and just say what I'm grateful for. And I go out there with my journal as well and stuff like that. And so I find the days that I don't do it, I'm not quite 100% as compared to the days where I do it. So I think it's such a powerful thing.
It is. And there's nothing magic about this particular book, right? We don't need a journal to do this effort. But generally, I've just found a tool, something like this has been beneficial for sure.
Right.
So that's the prevention and promotion. And I'll just jump into the last one, if that's okay, the last continuum. And this is a continuum that ranges from inward mindset, which is self-protective, to an outward mindset, which is value creating. And when we have an inward mindset, we are prone to see others as being less than important than ourselves. And when we see others as being less important than ourselves, then we have a tendency to see them as objects and to value them as such. Whereas if I have a outward mindset, I see them as being just as important as myself, which allows me to see them as a person and to value them as such. And let me give you a quick example of this. It's somewhat of a comical example and some that I think everybody can relate to, which is, have you ever been driving on the freeway? Somebody speeds past you in the lane next to you and they put their blinker on to move into your lane in front of you and you don't let them in, right? So I've been there, I've done that. And what I've learned is when I don't let them in, I kind of have to justify myself. And how I justify myself is I don't say I didn't let that person in. I say I didn't let that car in. Because what I'm telling myself in that moment is this position in this lane is more important to me than it is to them. And when I see myself as more important than them, I don't create space for them. But if I see them as being just as important as me, now I'm able to create space. Like, how big of a deal is it that I'm one car behind where I was before, right? Really not that big of a deal. But that's a really quick example. But what we've learned is, you look at any human atrocity that has occurred, it has got this mindset at its foundation, that inward mindset. I'm more important than you. Whereas this outward mindset is what brings life, love, belonging to our communities, which is seeing others as being as important as ourselves. So that's the inward to outward mindset continuum.
Yeah, that's great. Do you think for people who, so many of us, look, let's be honest, we're more thinking about ourselves, right? How do we look? How do we feel? How do we this, right? So how can we consciously maybe be a little bit more outward if we are a little inward, do you think?
Well, I think you can ask yourself just in the moment, am I being inward or am I being outward? It's just a helpful prompt for me is in that moment. I think out of these 4 mindset sets, this is the one that we fluctuate most readily in. And it can be very context dependent, right? We could be a very kind and charitable person at home, but when we step into the car and are on the freeway, we can become a different person, right? So this is a little bit more sensitive, if you will, to the context and the environment that we're in, for sure. But I think that, and here's what I've learned. I've learned in my journey of working on my mindsets that this one, in order for me to shift, I've had to intensely work on healing my relationship with myself. So what I've kind of learned is that if I don't think highly of myself, I have the need to put myself above others. But if I value myself and I'm stable in my value and my relationship with myself, I have a greater capacity to create the space for others. And so as I've kind of been on my own development, and I'm going to call it a healing journey, that's been what I've needed. I'm not going to say that's what everybody needs. I'd like to think that everybody can improve their relationship with themselves, but that's what I've needed to help move the needle on this mindset shift from inward to outward.
Yeah, that's really good. The healing the relationship with yourself or kind of loving yourself more, feeling better about yourself, more confident, things like that. Is there any advice you have there for people who maybe don't feel quite that way right now?
Well, let me bring up something that I've learned. So, one of the things that I've dove into is I've tried to dive deep into mindsets, right? We've already talked about it at a
Mhm.
neuroscience level. I'm going to add to that, which I've learned. I've kind of asked the question, well, what makes some people have more of a self-protective mindset versus a value-creating mindset? And one of the answers is that the more trauma one experiences in their life, the more their body's nervous system becomes wired for self-protection. It's our
Mhm.
body's natural reaction to trauma. And guess what? Research is finding 80% of adults have experienced trauma to the degree that it has impacted their body's nervous system so that they're more wired for self-protection. And so I think, I mentioned this concretely with inward and outward mindsets, but I think it's related to all of them. It's just going to show up differently. So if we have trauma in our past, our hang up might be more with the inward and outward. That's me. But when I work with leaders, I find that a lot of their hang up connected to past trauma is on the fixed to growth mindset. So everybody's a little bit different in terms of how their trauma manifests within their body, but ultimately, to me, this is just the most meaningful message of all of this, which is if we want to become better, if we want to elevate along our being side, we've got to heal our minds, our bodies, and our hearts. And so
Mm.
when I think about when we do this being side development work, there's actually a term for it. It's called vertical development. I
Mm.
kind of think of that. There's three different levels of vertical development efforts. Okay. I'm going to call them starter or surface level strategies, deeper level, and deepest level. And we've kind
Mm.
of already talked about all of them, but let me just kind of pull it together. So the starter level, these are things like gratitude journaling, getting out into the sun every day, meditating, yoga, cold plunging, the 5-minute journal. These are all starter level things. And the reason why they are helpful along our being side is because they help us refine and upgrade our body's nervous system, improve our emotional regulation abilities. So that's the place really to start. And as we get into it, as you kind of saw with me, I had the 5-minute journal, and then I then dug deeper. At this deeper level is when we start to awaken to our programming and make conscious effort to shift our programming. So when we do mindset work, that's at this deeper level. We're awakening to our programming and we're doing something about it. Then at the deepest level, this is generally when we need some sort of professional support. Usually it's a form of therapy. It could be trauma therapy. It could be neurofeedback therapy. And it could be even there's research on psychedelic assisted therapy. So this deepest level probably isn't the place to start, but some of us may need to get there depending upon, maybe our past, our trauma. It also maybe because we've got some neurodeficiencies like ADHD, for example, that might be playing a role in our being side altitude. And
Yeah.
I think, we could even add in and bring in part of the conversation. What role does like our physical health and nutrition play in all of this? Because it's surely integrated, right? The healthier our body is, the more capable our body's nervous system is to respond healthily to our environment. So I'll let you, if you want to
Right.
add anything there, add
Yeah, well,
something there.
just to kind of piggyback off that last point, we know for a fact when you don't get a good night's sleep, if you drink alcohol the night before, if you're eating like crap, you are not going to have the mental resiliency. You are not
Yeah.
going to have the patience to deal with things and pause and not be reactive and do those things compared to if you did have a good night's sleep, if you are eating healthy. Right now I've been eating so healthy and getting good sleep and like feeling like really dialed in mentally and physically more than I kind of ever have in my life. And it's just with some little kind of shifts there. But again, now I'm kind of like addicted to this good feeling mentally and physically, and I want to
Yeah.
keep it going. And so it kind of is this, just like how people can get into negative cycle loops. This is like a positive cycle loop that people can get into as well. And when you start feeling, exercising, sleeping good, eating better, you start feeling better. You start going out in the morning, doing your gratitude and stuff like that. But I want to ask you, I wanted to follow up on this. So step one, we kind of identified, you do your gratitude, your journal, whatever. Step two, I think this might be kind of maybe the most challenging, where how do you go to step one to step two and kind of develop this awareness of like, oh, maybe even when people say sometimes like, or when I think like, do I have trauma? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I do. I mean, yeah, I kind of had some traumatic things, but like, I don't really feel like it's trauma. Like, I don't really know. Like, how do we even figure this out?
Yeah, and that's what why I feel like it's so important to get the word out here about this, because where we go, or if we go back to my example of Cheryl earlier, I kind of sensed she needed something different, deeper. She knew that. She just didn't know what was available to her, right? And so we generally default to getting the knowledge and the skills. We focus on the doing side. But there's a growing body of work, right, that is very much focused on this being side. And that's where my mindset work comes in. But yeah, I think there's a variety of other people. In fact, who was I talking to the other day? That we're getting into like internal family systems therapy approach. There's coaching. There's a book by Byron Katie, and she's got her
Loving
approach.
What Is. Loving What Is.
There you go. There's another book called Immunity to Change that has an exercise, and it's one that I use in my coaching work that allows us to just dig deep into our programming. You identify an if-then statement, such as, if I receive constructive criticism, then how does my body respond, right? Maybe if it gets offensive, well, that's what I learn is my programming. And then I need to go through some efforts to be able to upgrade my programming. And we talked through some of those things that we can do. But generally, where most of these tactics are coming from are from people that, what I would say traditionally we would recognize as more of an Eastern approach to human development.
Right.
I just don't like grouping it that way, because I think it's, there's just some tactics there that the Western world didn't adopt as readily, and come to find out that there's some of those things that are really beneficial for us in terms of our helping our bodies to be more capable and resilient in responding to the complexity in the world around us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Agree 100%. Ryan, this has been amazing. I know we've just scratched the surface. Tell people about your book and where they can find it. I know you also do kind of coaching, consulting, things of that nature. Tell people a little bit about maybe how they could work with you and find you and learn more.
Yeah, in fact, I'll offer this up. If you go to my website, ryangottfredson.com, you take one of my assessments. I've got multiple assessments there. We talked about one of them. If you take those assessments and you want to jump on a call with me to talk through your results, I'd be happy to do so. So go take the assessment. Just shoot me an email as a response to the results that you get, and then we can connect there. Or otherwise, I'm on all social media platforms, probably most active on LinkedIn, and would love to connect with anybody there. So I appreciate the opportunity to even, throw my stuff out there. And hopefully people can sense this in terms of my story. I mean, this has been as impactful on me as it has been on any of the people that I work with. And it's one approach to being side development, but I think if we could kind of put that label to it, let's focus on our being, not our doings. I think for most of us, it's going to be a trajectory altering experience in terms of the trajectory of our development efforts. And so hopefully that's the case for anybody listening.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's been the most important work that I've ever done. The best investment I've ever made has been in books, seminars, courses, trainings that have helped me kind of develop my mindset, my being aspect of things. The doing aspect, again, when you have the right mindset, when you have the right being mindset, you figure out the right skill sets to learn and the right things to do. So that part actually comes easier when you have the right mindset. So I just think everything you're talking about is great. The new book, Becoming Better, that's available like on Amazon and everywhere books are sold.
Any place you buy books, you'll be able to find it. Yep.
Amazing. Well, Ryan, thank you so much. This has been great. I love talking about this stuff. I think it's the most important thing. We do a lot of episodes about health, but again, there's no lack of information, especially with over 200 episodes that we've even just recorded on our own podcast here about what to do in terms of health and exercise. There's many different strategies that are proven to work. But the mindset is like, if we know what to do, why aren't we doing it? And that comes down to the mindset part of it that's the most powerful. And so I'm a big believer that people should work with coaches, read books, take trainings, do all the things to improve their mindset. And really grateful that you're out here doing that in the world and helping people. So thank you so much for joining us. And I hope we can do this again sometime.
Let's do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would really mean a lot to me if you would forward this episode along to any friends, family members, anyone that you think that would get value out of it and learn something important. The mission at Peak Performance is to help people prioritize and transform their health. And so if you think someone will get value, please, please, please do forward this episode along to them. Also, if you could please rate and review and subscribe on whatever podcast player you are listening to this on, we would greatly appreciate that as well. It means a lot. And I want to tell you about a couple of new products that we just released. You can get 20% off your first order at buypeakperformance.com. That's BUY peakperformance.com. We just released a brand new grass-fed beef protein isolate. This is my favorite new protein powder because it's great for muscle building and recovering and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't give the stomach discomfort and gas that a lot of people get from different types of proteins like whey protein. Some types of plant proteins can do the same as well. It seems to be really, really easy on the stomach while still giving all the great benefits of muscle building and everything else that you want from taking in adequate protein. So check out our new beef protein isolate. We have it in unflavored, which I actually mix and blend with my morning coffee every morning. We have a vanilla and we have a chocolate. You can buy it on Amazon, but again, you also do get 20% off your first order at buypeakperformance.com, BUY peakperformance.com. We've also recently released organic mushroom coffee. We have these in Keurig compatible K-Cup coffee pods. We have organic mushroom coffee with lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, turkey tail, and chaga mushrooms blended with the high altitude organic coffee that we've been using and that we've been famous for years. So that's been a big hit, that one as well. You can get on our website or Amazon, any of our products. And of course, we're always famous for our organic green superfood powder that has almost 5,000 reviews on Amazon with a very high star rating. We're known as the best tasting USDA certified organic green superfood powder with over 25 plus organic ingredients. Again, we also have the organic red superfood powder. We still, of course, have the organic plant protein for those who do prefer the plant protein, but I'm really excited about this new beef protein isolate and all of our other products. We do have over 100 products, so just check us out if you type in Peak Performance Supplements on Amazon or if you go to buypeakperformance.com. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.